Good afternoon and welcome to the Columbus Metropolitan Club. We're streaming live from the Boathouse at Confluence Park. I'm Jane Scott, and it's a privilege and a pleasure to serve as the president of the Columbus Metropolitan Club and to welcome you to our broadcast today. We've made a lot of friends through our live streaming, and many of you may not know that the Columbus Metropolitan Club was founded by 13 women leaders in 1976, at a time when women weren't always welcomed into the men's clubs. They formed an organization that was 100% inclusive, and today, as a 501c3 nonprofit, we fulfill our mission of connecting people and ideas through community conversation with support from nearly 1,500 members who pay their annual dues and more than 100 companies and organizations that support us as sponsors and through personal donations from folks like yourselves. I'm really excited to announce today that our lunch forum featuring Richard Cordray on Wednesday, June 10, we are reopening for a live audience. So in addition to the live stream, we will have a small audience limited to about 50 members with extensive safety protocols in place here at the Boathouse. You can register for this luncheon and become a member if you're not already right now on our website at columbusmetroclub.org. Guests must arrive early at 11:30 so that we can have lunch together and then launch the new content live broadcast promptly at noon. Today's CMC Forum is supported by the Columbus Regional Airport Authority, and our live stream partners for the special report series are NBC4, NBC4i, WOSU Public Media, PNC, the Tom E. Daly Foundation, MORPC, the Dispatch Media Group, and OSU Wexner Medical Center. And we'd like to a special thank you to those of you who purchased virtual seats for today's forum. We're really grateful for this very special support. Among the first casualties of the pandemic were the arts, sports, travel, entertainment, hospitality industries. All provide a rich contribution to our quality of life. We could talk all day about what's not happening, but what we'd like to do today is talk about what is happening and what's important as we continue to look ahead. So with us today, please welcome President and CEO of Experience Columbus, Brian Ross, President and CEO of CAPA, Chad Whittington, and our host, award-winning journalist at NBC4 and a CMC board member, Colleen Marshall. Colleen, we're looking forward to this conversation. Thank you so much for all being here today.
Thank you, Jane, and thanks to both of you for being willing to share your expertise with us. And I think first we need to start out with where we are in the arts, with Experience Columbus, with where we have been, because Columbus was getting a bigger and bigger reputation for being a destination point, a great place for conventions, a fabulous place for the arts, and all of a sudden we hit a brick wall. So where are we right now?
So you're absolutely right, Colleen. In 2019, we were celebrating a phenomenal year. We had ASAE in our community, which they had the best ever convention that they've ever had. We had over 50 corporate and community partners support that, over 600 volunteers, which again was not heard of. We actually welcomed 1 million more visitors in 2019 to equal 43 million visitors for 2019, which is up 3% and higher than the U.S. average of 2%. So we were on a roll. We were hitting on all cylinders, and then devastation happened, and with the COVID-19 coming out, and it really started with the Arnold Sports Festival weekend.
Yeah, and the Arnold weekend, we all know, was such a shock that the governor would bring an end to the Arnold Classic. When you look back at that now, it seemed so minuscule. But that had to be shocking for the arts. I'm a season ticket holder for the Broadway series, and we were suddenly wondering, well, can I go into the theater and sit side by side with people that I don't know? What was it like for you, and what has it done to CAPA?
It was indeed a strange time at the theaters, and the Arnold actually gave us an opportunity to think ahead a little bit about how we were going to handle it when the time came, potentially, to have to close the theaters. And it happened during a tough week. My Fair Lady opened up on Wednesday night. The announcement from the governor came out on Thursday, and we had to shut down the show. And the buildings have been quiet ever since then. The staff did an amazing job of getting us through that. If you think about it, we're programmed to sell tickets, not to have to refund tickets and contact literally hundreds of thousands of ticket holders for shows that go on well into the future, a year into the future in some cases. So that's how we spent the first month after the theaters closed, was just refunding tickets, communicating with people, postponing shows. One of the things that we've tried to do is move shows into the future. There were so many great shows that were going to be here in Columbus in the spring, from 4 weeks of Wicked to Neil deGrasse Tyson, and so those shows are now scheduled out in the future, either the fall or next spring, because we want audiences to have the chance to see them.
Okay, you say maybe in the fall. In the fall, we know there won't be a vaccine by the fall. So how will the arts, how will these organizations plan for reopening while the pandemic continues? What do you do in a theater where everyone is side by side, row by row?
That's the biggest question we face, and the biggest one that we don't yet have an answer to. We are working on that every day, and we're working with partners on the national level. Obviously, if you think about the touring Broadway, it's in all 50 states in some form, and there's a lot of work going on to figure that out. Those conversations have really started. I think a month ago we were still at the point where we couldn't even start to think about, okay, how might we reopen? What might make sense? We know we can't get to 6 feet apart and have touring Broadway. 6 feet social distancing in a theater reduces your capacity to about 30%. And everyone can understand the economics just don't work at those numbers. So there are things that we can do. We can put up barriers between staff and the public that's coming in. We can do touchless tickets, so we never have to touch the same piece of paper. We can spread out lines. We can restrict number of people in the restrooms, and we can require people to wear masks. And I know that it's not popular to talk about that. There are a lot of different opinions on that. But I think no matter what the timing is on reopening, and we don't know exactly what that timing is, if we're doing things like that are going to allow us to open earlier. Again, the idea that 6 foot distancing is going to happen and we're going to be able to open is not realistic. So it's going to be learning from things that are happening across the country, do the best we can, and then see if we can get there. I am optimistic that in some form, maybe 75% capacity, for example, we might be able to reopen the theaters in the fall. But we still got a long way to go to make that a reality.
Well, you know, he mentioned that refunding tickets and how difficult that must be when you're used to selling tickets. But let's also talk about the tax impact, because every one of those tickets and every one of these events that comes to town and every hotel room that's sold, there's a tax benefit for the city of Columbus. That's one of the reasons we want to be a destination point. Do you have any idea how much money the city itself is losing because of all of this?
Well, what I can share is that we know there's going to be a tremendous impact on the overall revenues to the community. We know right now that just since the second week of March through the end of August, we've had to cancel or reschedule over 100 different groups that represent about 180,000 room nights in our community and $145 million in visitor spend. So it's had a tremendous impact. And for the month of April alone, if you look at some of the data that just came out, in April of 2020, in our metropolitan statistical area, hotels had revenues of about $50 million. The new data that we just received as estimates are about $10 million. So it's having a very tremendous negative impact on the overall bed tax dollars, which has an impact on our community, because it does, the bed tax dollars do support human service organizations, the arts organizations, the Housing Trust, Experience Columbus and the Greater Columbus Sports Commission, and then also the Franklin County the Franklin County Convention and Facilities Authority.
We also can't forget in all of this the artists and performers themselves. You talked about the touring company, but we have musicians that are based right here with the symphony, with the opera, with, you know, there are fine artists who are working in their mediums that can't display their work. And you know, I'm thinking the Columbus AIDS Task Force, well, now it's ARC Ohio, and then it became Equitas Ohio, but this is supposed to be the year for Art for Life. That was a big event this summer. So for the artists, are you hearing from performers and artists and how they're getting by through all of this?
It's been tough, and it's a great point. It's an ecosystem. It starts with individual artists, then there are small arts groups, and then the larger arts groups. We all need each other. You don't have a strong arts community without all of those different sectors, and it's been tough. Many artists were in a gig economy before it was a cool or a popular thing to be in a gig economy. It's the nature of their work, and when you don't have any sort of guarantee and the floor falls out from underneath you, it's a tough thing. We certainly have heard those stories. I think to the credit of the community, that has been heard, and everyone is doing what they can, even if it's in small ways, to provide support to those artists. For example, Kappa is doing the second round of the Kappa Apart Together concert series, so it's taking local artists. We live stream those on Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights. We pay them to do so. They have an opportunity to ask for donations during that performance, and so it's giving them first an outlet for their creativity, because artists need to create, and even at times like this, probably more importantly, in times like this, they need to be doing that for themselves, and it also gives them a little source of income during these tough times. And there are lots of examples of that happening with arts groups all throughout the city. We did have a group in the theater in small ensembles that were recording with their musicians on the stage. So obviously no audiences, but if we can keep people spaced, we're starting to do that. Again, just to allow that creative outlet to be open and to be able to give folks some work.
Columbus has a reputation for having philanthropic support from individuals, from families, from trusts, but also from local businesses that have been supporters for arts efforts. But now everyone is suffering. So who are you going to be turning to pull all of you out of this hole that's just getting deeper and deeper? Where are you going to be turning to for support?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. We have a phenomenal community, and one of the things that we've looked at Experience Columbus is that we typically sell and market to groups and individuals outside of Columbus. We've made a pivot, and we're really focusing inside out. And our goal is to get the residents to understand what's available, what we can do. And we actually just started a new campaign, Live Forward, which we're very excited about because it does bring out the DNA, the culture of Columbus, and how smart, open, progressive we are as a community. And what this does is it works together to help people understand who needs assistance, who's providing assistance. One of the things that we're doing is we're working with the Mask Up, which the mayor has started, and that's one of the things that, you know, the mask equals kindness. We're also making sure that we are promoting the Big Give with the Columbus Foundation. We're doing a lot of innovative digital and virtual sessions for people to understand how they can help those who are no longer employed. And it's a big hit. The hospitality sector in Central Ohio supports 78,000 jobs. So that's 1 in 12 jobs in Franklin County. And if you look at the national average of about 50% of those jobs being lost, that's 36,000 jobs in Franklin County. And those are the chefs, those are the bartenders, the waiters, the housekeepers, the valet. So there are a lot of people out there that unfortunately are having a challenging time, and our community truly is stepping up to help those individuals through this time.
So when you say this is a new program to help, you're talking about funding that goes directly to people, or is this for support of arts organizations?
This is for support of arts organizations, support of restaurant workers, support of retail. What we want to make sure is that we're helping people understand the sales of gift cards to help those individuals as well. Cameron Mitchell's done a phenomenal job with that. The Short North Arts District just had a big promotion with Betsy and her team in regards to raising dollars. So it's for everyone.
And I know, we've mentioned the symphony and the found out suddenly you have to cancel what was expected to be one of the best shows you were going to have that season. You must have all been scrambling and thinking, how do we move on from here? And are you shocked at how long it's, here we are now in May, almost into June, still no end in sight?
Certainly, when this all started on March 12th, we thought the end goal was, let's just get to July 1 and this will all be behind us and life will go on. And obviously for all of that, that's changed and that's not the reality now. So I talk a lot with people. It's the uncertainty of the situation. Even as other sectors of the economy start to reopen, we don't know what our timeline is yet. To the point that you mentioned earlier, social distancing in theaters is hard. Are people going to be comfortable sitting close or next to one another? We're just not there yet. So it's just removed everything we thought we knew, and we've had to adjust. And again, I can't give enough credit to the staff at Kappa and out in the arts community as a whole for being able to do that. But it was an overnight change. I think one of the things we've learned, though, and we talked about the Broadway series. I know there are a lot of people that look forward to it. One of the comments I get most is about Wicked. We're expecting to run 4 weeks of Wicked, 80,000 tickets, and we weren't able to bring that. We're working to make sure that those shows are going to happen in the future, even for the Broadway now. Come From Away is scheduled for September. I can't promise that Come From Away is going to happen at the Ohio Theater. But I can tell you if it doesn't, we've got a backup plan, and it will come at a later point when we're comfortable that we're going to be able to do the show. So that was, I think, one of the biggest I just want to say thank you to the community. I want to echo what Brian was saying. One of the things that we're not creating what drives us as an organization, as an arts community right now. The content, seeing people come into the theaters, it's tough to work hard and do your job when you can't see that end product. And yet, one of the things that keeps us all going is the incredible support that we continue to get from the community. I'm amazed, frankly, with the uncertainty that's out there, what we saw in the stock market. We're still getting support, strong support from the community, corporate, individuals, foundations, and it's one of the greatest motivators. It's what's going to help us get through this and make sure we can open our doors on the far side. Just getting letters, and it doesn't matter how big the check is, but saying, hey, we're thinking of you. There are lots of other needs in the community that are important, but the arts are important too. It's really what keeps us going right now, so thank you to everyone for that.
Well, you mentioned Wicked, canceling Wicked. It was supposed to be here for a month, and I know that that's one of those shows that cities compete for. So now everyone is canceling their entire season. So when the restart begins, everyone's going to be competing to get Wicked for a week. How are you going to handle that? Or do you find yourself already knowing, okay, Brian mentioned before we started, we compete with Nashville for a lot of conventions because of our size, because of our location. Who are your big competitors for those big shows? And how do you make sure Columbus gets its share?
I think it's a great testament to the city that we are considered a market that shows want to come to now on that top level with places like Nashville and a lot of the cities that we would call our competitive peers. So it's a lot easier than it used to be. We have great markets here. We have great support. We bring in large numbers of people. Often we're playing to over 90% capacity for the Broadway shows. So when you provide those kind of numbers and the shows have a stake in the sales, they want to come here. And that's what we're seeing right now. So Wicked, we lost these 4 performances, but the conversation started right away about when can we come back to Columbus? And that's them reaching out to us, which again, that's incredible. That's what you want to hear. It wasn't like that 10 years ago in Columbus. Columbus, but it is now, and that's also a reason, if you look at the season we've got in front of us, Hadestown, a show just won the Tony a year ago. It's fresh, it's still on Broadway, but fresh in the touring market, and we were able to get it because the producers now say, when they say, okay, where do we want to go in that first year of touring, Columbus is in the mix. And that, again, it says a lot about our city, where we are, and how we support the arts.
Let's talk about the conventions that we've lost. Now we're into the third, almost the fourth month of this. Who had to cancel their plans to come to Columbus, and what's underway to maybe try to get those groups back?
Well, we had many conventions that have canceled for this year, and some are rebooking into next year, but we do have a large number of annual conventions so 31 Gifts, for an example, or the American Horticulture, or American Hort, is another example that they'll be back next year. They can't rebook this year as much as returning next year. But what I will say is how we get out of this and how we see success, it really starts with the leisure traveler. And we know that right now there is a tremendous amount of pent-up demand for those individuals that want to go see friends, want to go see family. That's the first place people want to go to, besides the barber or the gym maybe, but they want to go visit those individuals they haven't had an opportunity to see. And 69% of them want to do that in a car. So Columbus as a drive destination is in a very good place. When you look at all the data, it supports that we have more business in that friends and family area than most in the U.S. So we will get some demand from that. We also know that we have a younger demographic that tends to come to Columbus, and in the next 6 months, all the data shows they're going to be the first to travel. So we're set up to be in a very good position. What we do have to understand is people want to make sure that they feel or that they are safe, that the health and wellness is a priority. And our community is working very hard and are committed to making sure that we are a very safe community. Not that people feel safe, but they actually are safe. And we have through the Live Forward, we have a pledge that individuals are taking and organizations. We have over 85 organizations that have made that pledge. And it's really FWD. So follow, making sure that you're following all the requirements and protocol that are being given by the CDC, the state of Ohio, and the city of Columbus. And then the W is for wearing all your gear, making sure you have your masks and appropriate protective gear. And then D for distancing, making sure we're providing social distancing. So there's 85 organizations that have signed up for that. One of the other things we're looking at, Colleen, is that even taking that commitment to another level, and there's an accreditation, an international accreditation, that we're looking into becoming a GBAC accredited destination, and it's GBAC. It stands for the Global Biorisk Advisory Council, and they specialize in the prevention and mitigation of pandemics. And we want to be one of the first destinations to get that accreditation, but we have some tremendous partners that are also stepping up to become accredited. We're going to have the first transit system with CODA becoming accredited. The airport is another organization that's going to be accredited. We have venues, we have hotels. So we're looking at really taking that next step to show that we are committed to the well-being and safety of our visitors.
Some of this, though, will be psychological. You're saying we are accredited, our transit system, our hotels, we have all of these organizations, but you need people to believe it. And you need people to have confidence that they can enjoy the arts again. So what kind of a marketing nightmare is this going to be for an organization like Kappa? You want people to have a lovely night out. How do you market, have a nice night out and we're not going to kill you? How do how do you do this?
Well, we're probably not going to put it that way, for starters.
Yeah, that's why I didn't go into marketing.
That's right. It's a tricky balance, and it is a process. I think that's one thing we realize and we accept. It's not going to be overnight. There is no way with a catchy marketing phrase that you're going to convince people that one day, it's just magically as safe as it was before all of this started to come to the theater. So it's going to be messaging, and we've already started a little bit of that messaging by saying we're working on it now. We're working at the national level. Here are the things that we think we can do with putting up barriers and increasing our cleaning, looking at new cleaning products. But when the time comes, it's going to have to be very clear messaging on the safety issues, and then trying some things. I think we start with the smaller venues, and maybe those are at 50% capacities, and just bring in some artists. We know we're not going to make money on those, but that's fine. We just want to engage the audiences and get them comfortable coming back out, and then slowly, gradually increase the audiences from there. So I don't think it's a magic bullet, but I will tell you, we hear a lot from folks that say, when I can feel comfortable, I want to be back in the theaters, and I think that certainly helps. You have to have a product that people are interested in, and we've got that. So when we have the assurance on the health and safety side, which we're going to, when we open the doors, we will be able to look the community in the eye and say, you're going to be as safe as you can. There are no 100% guarantees. Really, I think we all understand that when you leave your front door, nothing's a 100% guarantee, but we're keeping you as safe as we can, being in our venues, and that's what we're shooting for.
You might also find yourselves in the uncomfortable position of being the mask police, being the distancing police, and having to deal with people who, frankly, don't think this is a problem and that they shouldn't, it's against their freedom to have to wear a mask. It's going to be very awkward for an arts organization or a convention site to enforce these rules and keep everyone safe. So have you thought about how we're going to enforce all of this?
Well, I think there's one key thing that we have to keep in mind, and messaging's everything for people. Again, it's not about feeling safe, it's about being safe. And we know more than ever that all the digital platforms play a tremendous role in this. So it's up to all of us as we go out, as we start to open up our city, to be thoughtful, to be responsible. We don't want to be, on these different social media platforms as the example of what not to do. We want to be the example of what to do. So we all have to keep that in mind. And quite honestly, that's the foundation that will help us see success and see more opening and see more opportunities and allow our economy, particularly in the hospitality side of things, to grow.
How about you? Have you thought about enforcement in the lobby there? How you make people abide by these new rules?
I think we're just going to give all of our volunteers at the doors tasers, and that should take care of it. That is a great question. It's one that is a question I lose sleep over, because even if we have great enforcement methods, saying the volunteers aren't going to let people in, they're not going to scan your tickets, we're going to take you out of the theater if you're, if you're going to your seat and you take your mask off. Once the lights go down and the curtain goes up and you're sitting 15 deep in the middle of the theater, that's a tough thing, how you deal with that situation. So I think, like Brian was alluding to, we're all in this together, and we're all going to have to keep each other safe, and that is a part of the safety protocol. It's the one that makes me most nervous because it's the one I can't control, but there is a piece of that we're going to have. If we want to enjoy the arts community, if we want our lives and our economy to open back up to the full extent it can, we've all got to work together, and that's the only way I think we're really going to be able to accomplish it.
A lot of people think, well, if you're outside and you can stay apart and you have the fresh air blowing around and people are wearing masks, this should work. So let's talk about the festivals, the arts festivals, the Jazz Fest, the things that we're apparently missing. We've already canceled Red, White, and Boom. So what else are we missing, or are you looking for ways to maybe keep some of these festivals alive this summer?
Well, I believe it does go back. A majority of those festivals you mentioned have been canceled for this year, and that's tough. I mean, look how beautiful it is out today over this past weekend. Myself, like others, we get energy out of going out and really experiencing, again, that culture that Columbus provides that no other community can duplicate. But it is a challenge, and we have to understand that somehow we have to work past that, and we have to find ways locally to support the different organizations, the restaurants, the retail shops that are open, so that we can start to see some progress. You know, if for some reason that Ohio State does not have fans in the stadiums this year, that's going to have a huge impact on the hotels, as well as many other retail and restaurants and things of that sort. So there's a lot to consider.
Have you thought about that, about maybe something like Picnic with the Pops? Is there some way to resurrect and save that, or is it just too late this year to be able to put on programs like that?
There's, and we also, Kappa presents Festival Latino in August each summer. We haven't made an announcement on that yet, although, you know, we're looking at it closely, and I think that we're very close to making a decision on that. It's tough. It's really tough to go ahead with these, and part of the reason that I hear a lot, well, why did they cancel that so early? Let's wait and see what happens. There are a lot of commitments that you have to make to put on any big festival. Contractual commitments where you're putting dollars on the line, you're starting to work on the site, do all the planning, things that cost money, and you know, we're a couple of months out from Festival Latino, and we've got to commit to artists if we're going to, national and international artists, and there's just not enough certainty to do it. And that's really, from my perspective, what makes it so hard to be in the festival business right now, is that pre-planning. It's not that we don't want to be out there. We certainly realize that, yeah, you know, I'm not a health expert, but certainly I hear what everybody else hears, that it's safer to be outdoors, and maybe there's a way to do it. But, you know, we don't know how to control the crowds. We don't know how close people will be able to be at that point, or how many people we could let in. And so it's just all that pre-planning that you need. A lot of folks haven't been able to figure it out for their festivals, and that's why we're losing so much of the summer. I certainly think, again, from the perspective of the arts, when we get the opportunity to have small crowds, whether it's indoors or outdoors, that'll be a better testing market than a Picnic with the Pops, which is wildly successful. You know, the symphony is able to bring in thousands of people for that. Festival Latino, which brings in over 100,000 over the course of a weekend. Those aren't going to be where you're going to see the arts reopen first. It's going to be in the Lincoln Theater, it's going to be in the Rice Studios, it's going to be in the smaller performing spaces around town, and then we'll build up from there.
You also must have concerns about volunteers, because so many of these festivals and big events, and you mentioned volunteers even taking tickets for Kappa. Volunteers are quite often older people who are going to be concerned about getting back into the stream of things. Is that going to be an issue?
I would assume there would be some issue there, but as we talk about the different festivals, we have to remember there's a lot of our current attractions that are not open right now. I mean, COSI's not open, the zoo's not open. So even before we get there, there's a lot of the tremendous assets we have in our community that we need to find a way and work with the governor and his team, also Mayor Ginther and their team, to be responsible and thoughtful, but really to start exposing people locally to things they know, and then grow out. But I'm sure, based on the different demographics of the volunteers, there's going to be a lot of anxiety, a lot of uncertainty, and people that aren't comfortable. So I think also it's the amount of crowds, whether there'll be the same amount of attendees in the past, or if that will be diminished because of that anxiety.
So what are the markers you're both looking for? What will tell you it's time for us to try to start this relaunch, whether it's in small venues, whether it's local organizations ready to roll out? What do you have to see before you are comfortable trying to get the arts and entertainment open again in Columbus?
Well, the obvious starting point is the state saying you can reopen the buildings at some capacity. And once we have that internally, the most important thing is to make sure we're comfortable we can keep the crowd safe. So protocols that are being consistently used across the country, I think, is an important point and a starting point for us. If you think a lot of the artists, there are a lot of unions on the national level that work with our artists, with our stagehands. When we have protocols that are satisfactory to us, that they feel will keep their folks safe. We've talked a lot about keeping audiences safe, but I want to say that when we think about keeping folks safe, it's just as important to keep those that are working backstage and on the stage. You think about having 70 symphony musicians on the stage, or a Broadway show where there's certainly not going to be 6-foot distancing for most of the scenes. That's a whole other thing that we've got to work on. We've got to be comfortable that we can keep those working safe as well before we're going to reopen. So I do feel like we're making huge progress. I am much more optimistic that we're getting to solutions now than I was even a couple of weeks ago. I think everybody has settled in. They've dealt with getting shows rescheduled and refunds done and all those sorts of things that we need to do. And we're now focused on what does the future look like. And we're going to have a great plan here within, I would say, a month from now. And then it's sitting down with federal, state, local governments and saying, okay, here's what we can do. Here's how we can reopen our theaters. And then it's testing some things.
What about you? What are you looking for?
I would agree with Chad 100%. The health and wellness and well-being of individuals is going to be at the forefront. We're looking at a phased-in process from the governor's direction and even from Mayor Ginther's direction. And as we phase in, seeing success, being responsible, being thoughtful on how the reopenings are going. And although it may seem like a crawl, which it is, we need to see success, and then we'll see more opportunities.
And I know Jane has been throughout this event taking questions from people online who have their own questions for the two of you. So what are we hearing, Jane?
Well, I think a lot of people are expecting the two of you to have extraordinarily good crystal balls, but I'm going to ask some questions here so you can get your crystal ball out. Carolyn Caldwell asks, are there any plans to bring concerts to the Columbus Commons or other outdoor venues? I think the question is asking more about using the outdoor venues rather than thinking of going into the theaters.
Yes, we've had some conversations about that. If we talk about large national acts, I would say what we talked about for festivals is also true for the touring artists, is that there's lead time to getting them to commit coming to a city. So if we wanted them to be here in July or August, for example, we would have already had to have made that commitment. We're not at the point we can make those commitments. We certainly even, in a space like the Commons, where if you put a couple thousand people, they would be fairly close together. We don't feel like we can say for sure, yeah, we can do a great concert there right now. So we're continuing to do the virtual events now. I promise to the community that as soon as we get the green light, as soon as we understand from a safety perspective we can keep people safe, we will start experimenting and creating opportunities at whatever level we can to get people back into the buildings. I'll tell you, it's tough. I started out at Kappa doing maintenance, so I'm used to being in empty theaters, but walking through, standing on the stage of the Ohio, looking out, it's dark right now, and knowing it's not because we're just in between shows, but it's because the community can't be in our theaters. That's a tough thing. It's a tough thing. We want the communities back, and we're going to get you back as soon as we can do it safely.
Matt Mapak of COSI asks if we could start marketing local attractions such as the Columbus Arts Walk and the Quarry Metro Park that have so much to offer.
We absolutely should be, and we may be marketing those. If we're not, we can check with our team. As long as we're, we're made aware of what those events are, when they are, and how to experience those events in a very safe and healthy manner. Hopefully, we can get that on our website to allow people to experience those.
And if you go to columbusmakesart.com, there's a great site there that where GCAC kind of brings together the information from a lot of organizations, so you can find information about virtual events that are going on in the arts community, as well as other events, individual artists, visual arts, all kinds of things. So it's a great resource for seeing what's going on in the community.
Great. Debbie Fleshman asks, when might the zoo reopen? Do we have any insights?
We do not. I know if you talk to Tom, he wants the zoo open about 3 weeks ago. But I can tell you that I was part of a committee that Tom served on as well that has given recommendations to the governor. It is my understanding that the State Health Department has approved the recommendations by the committee that we served on. So we're waiting for the governor to make that decision.
I'm just curious about the zoo. Are they thinking about doing one-way paths that you go in one way, or dividers? Because really the zoo, you congregate at some of the animal exhibits and you pass people on the paths. How are they thinking that they can control that in such a large space?
I'm not sure of all the details, but the one thing I can share with you is that Tom is brilliant at this, and he has put together a plan that I can assure you, you will be safe, and very, the health and well-being will be looked after.
Joyce Madison asks, why don't we use marquees to display encouraging messages?
And I would say we have done some of that. We're open to suggestions, and actually one of the first ones we did was a quote from Les Mis, and let's hope I get this right. Even after the darkest night, the sun will rise. And that was on the marquee of the Ohio Theater for a long time. And we thought it was a great message, appropriate for the time. And since then, we've done other things. There was a thank you to essential workers that ran on the marquee for a long time. And I think now there's a message, congratulations to the graduates of 2020. So we have tried to use those as an inspiration point throughout, and then put those out on social media and stuff. So, yeah.
I would also add that there are interactive kiosks experiences, so the Ikes throughout downtown and some of the key districts that also have tremendous messaging with them.
Can I mention one other thing real quick? Sorry. Mm-hmm. We talked a lot about the community support, and I did want to mention we've got the Big Give that's coming up in June. It's really a great opportunity to support not only the arts community, but any nonprofit. I think there are over 1,100 eligible nonprofits. This is a day that's put together by the Columbus Foundation to rally the community and bring support out for nonprofits. And certainly we need it now more than we ever have in the past. So I would encourage you to go to the Columbus Foundation website and take a look at that and help support. The dates, it starts 10 a.m. on June 10th and then runs through June 11th at 11 a.m. And then the dollars that you donate are also, there's a match piece that goes on top of that. So it's a great day. If you've been saying, gee, I know I need to support no matter whatever the nonprofit may be, and you just haven't got around to it, that's a great time to do it.
Is it possible for either of you to put a dollar figure on what this will mean to the community as far as hospitality, the arts, tourism? Have you taken a look at the overall picture of the millions of dollars that will be lost?
There would not be a way to do that type of calculation without getting some type of economic study done, which we may do, but at this point in time, I'm not able to share that. I don't.
Yeah, I would say in terms of the entire arts community, I don't know what the numbers are. I will say on a state basis, the arts employ about 300,000 jobs. Many of those are artists. Many of them are as-needed employees. So I'm comfortable saying a majority of those jobs have gone away in the short term, and it's obviously had a huge impact on the state.
Mark Cross asked, will venues face litigation if someone gets sick?
That's a great question. There is, as of last week, I don't think anything has moved, but there were bills in both the State House and Senate that provided, at least during the emergency period, some amount of civil immunity to protect businesses and organizations from being sued. I've also heard that it's so tough to prove where you got it that there's not much risk there, and I think that's true. But for mid-sized to small organizations, fighting a lawsuit renewed, even if it doesn't go anywhere, it can be expensive and can be time-consuming as well. So we appreciate that the state is considering legislation, and certainly I support it and hope it gets passed and provides some relief and some protection in the short term. And then I think looking beyond that, we'll have to see how it develops.
One of our Columbus Metropolitan Club founders, Mary Lazarus, asks, could you consider making adjustments to events like smaller venues, which you've addressed some of that, or no intermissions?
That's part of the conversation we've had. Yeah, cutting the intermission doesn't make people feel safer. Take events from smaller theaters, put them into slightly larger theaters. All of those things are on the table. And again, I think that's something that might have a 6-month or 9-month time frame to get audiences comfortable again, to get activity back into the buildings, to get our arts organizations active. They're not good forever solutions, just because there's a significant difference in cost between doing something at the Southern Theater and doing it at the Ohio Theater. So yeah, I think that's a great suggestion, one we've thought a lot about. And again, I think in the interim, that's how we're going to get our audiences back.
Michael Rooney asks, what can the community do to support the arts and travel industry specifically right now? And I know you've mentioned the Big Give. Maybe, Brian, or some things that we can do to support the travel industry.
Absolutely, and that would be those organizations and businesses that are open. Please get out and support them. Make sure you post that support and all the great experiences you're having from a social media standpoint. I want to also say there's a great incentive we have going on right now. We're partnering with BrewDog. So those of you out there, if you would like to nominate a frontline worker, it's called Cheers for Peers. So a frontline worker in the hospitality industry, we're working with BrewDog to do something special for those individuals on a weekly basis. But please, whether it's retail, restaurants, attractions, anything that's open is very important for them right now.
So, I don't know for sure I'm saying her name right, Kay Landis of Green Roots. She has a longer question that you've already answered most of it. What will you do differently moving forward that you did before? What will you be doing differently permanently based on what you've learned?
I think first of all, on the positive side, I think we all have learned how to use technology better, and although live performance is what we do and it's what we want to do for the community, the streaming services that we've used, the virtual concerts, I think that will continue to be a part of us as organizations going forward. We will use it to complement what we do live. We will use it to reach folks in the community that, for whatever number of reasons, might not be able to make it down to the theater. So I think on a positive, we are going to expand what we're able to provide to the community in terms of the arts. So I'm excited about that. We talked about a number of safety features earlier, and I will say, in a situation like this, you look at everything you do, and there are certainly things we do that, in hindsight, you'd say, we probably should have been doing that anyway. And so we will be making changes on the safety level, whether it's the barriers between you and a box office individuals, it's putting straws and lids on all of the drinks. So in the short term, even if you're wearing a mask, you can still comfortably do that. It is some of the cleaning procedures in between performances. Most of us would just clean after a performance and not at intermission. Easy things that we can do that'll make a big difference in terms of being able to keep people safe.
John Kane from Fern Exposition, when are we going to get back to work? Open the trade show floor in the vibrant downtown areas such as the Arena District in the Short North. And I guess I'll add, Brian, what's the last convention that's still booked that hasn't canceled? Is there one still on the books that would be the first one to start?
We still have some conventions that are booked that we would love to see come to fruition. One big one that we do annually is the Ohio School Boards Association, which is in November, which is a very large convention for us. But we would love to open up the convention trade show and continue to showcase our community in the Short North and all the tremendous assets we have. But as I've alluded to in a few times, just making sure that we are very responsible and thoughtful in how we're doing that, making sure that people are safe and their well-being is at the forefront, and then also understanding what the guidelines are provided us. From a large gathering standpoint, what our customers and clients are looking for. So there's a lot of variables, and I know Chad said it a few times, but there is tremendous uncertainty, and it's one of those things that is creating a lot of challenges for all of us in many different industries.
Before we let you go, I'm going to make each of you give me a prediction. Jane mentioned the crystal ball. If we're sitting here 6 months from now, where are we going to be as far as the arts, tourism, and entertainment in Central Ohio?
Wow. A lot of uncertainty. I would hope that if we do this, and I'm going to talk more about Columbus and the state of Ohio, if we do this appropriately and we are responsible and thoughtful in moving forward, I hope that we're much better off than any other state or city in the nation. And continuing to have prosperity as far as growth. We won't be back to where we were. That's going to take a long time, years actually. But for us to be in a much better position than we are now, and continuing to lead the nation as a state and as a city, I think that that's something we would be very proud of.
Yeah, the crystal ball is not clear on this, but I will give you my hopeful answer. And certainly we are planning for a lot of different scenarios. But one is that as we get into late summer and the fall, we start having the small venue performances with limited capacity that we talked about. And then by the turn of the year, so the start of 2021, we're starting to get back into the large venues, the Ohio and the Palace, for example, our 3,000 seaters. And we have a clear timeline on when the first Broadway show is going to happen in Columbus. I would be thrilled if that's where we're at come January.
All right, thanks to both of you so much.
Wow. Our special reports over the live streaming series, I think, have all been balanced, a balancing act between reality and optimism, and certainly that was the case today. Artists need to create. It's an ecosystem. We all need each other. The Art Apart program is going on. Masks Equal Kindness, the Live Forward initiative, all some very, very wise and good things for us to take home today. We hope that you'll come back and tune in next Wednesday at noon for a conversation and a new look of K through college education with Superintendent of Columbus City Schools, Talisha Dixon, and President of Ohio Dominican University, Robert Gervasi, as we continue our live stream special report series. And remember, Rich Cordray, on June the 10th, there will be 50 members in the room with us. Registration's open right now if you have an interest of joining us. We're grateful for support for the live streaming series from NBC4, NBC4i, WOSU Public Media, PNC, the Tommy Daly Foundation, MORPC, the Dispatch Media Group, OSU Wexner Medical Center, and additional support today from the Columbus Regional Airport Authority. Thank you very much to our speakers, Chad Whittington of CAPA, Brian Ross, Experience Columbus, and Colleen Marshall from NBC4. And my personal thanks to those of you who purchased virtual seats for today's forum. We're really grateful for this special kind of support. We hope to see you in person soon, but if not, we'll see you virtually next week. And in the meantime, be well and stay safe. Thank you.